Good day, everybody, and welcome to today's episode on my Malaysian retirement and property investment YouTube series in Johor Bahru. And today we're going to talk about a topic which is case studies about people who have chosen to move to Johor Bahru or to retire in Johor Bahru. I'm going to go through some case studies about people, why they choose to go and how are they living in Johor Bahru. So recently, Singapore media came out with news that MediaCorp actor Chen is relocating right to Johor Bahru. Now he's actually a Malaysian, right? He's not even Singaporean. He's a Malaysian. He's a Singapore PR. I don't really watch Singapore shows so much, so actually I'm not familiar what shows he act in. But this news had a bit of traction recently in the media. So Mr. Sean is actually, yeah, as I said, he's a Malaysian Singapore PR, 40 over years old. He's an actor Media Corp, and recently he has decided to go back to Johor Bahru. He rented a place in Eco Botanic together with his Malaysian wife and two daughters, right? And the two daughters are basically going to study in a private school or international school in Johor Bahru, right? And basically, Sean is still going to do some work in Singapore. He has invested in some Malaysian film, right? And the reasons basically why he chose to go to JB, right, was for a change of environment for the children, right? Reduced living costs. He said his living costs went down by 30% once he moved to JB, and of course, once you go to JB, he enjoyed a lot more living space. So this is a pretty common thing, right? Then you might say, hey Ryan, Sean is Malaysian so Malaysian confirm want to go back to JB. Well, yeah, I mean the problem with being a Singapore PR is that especially today's property rules in Singapore, right, is you can't really buy HDB if you are a Singapore PR. You have to sell all your existing properties first, and it's difficult to buy private property because you pay ABSD, right? And nowadays, of course, Singapore property prices are quite high, so maybe that's one of the reasons why Sean has chosen to relocate to Johor Bahru, right? And of course, many people are in their 40s or 50s. They are thinking about how to reduce retirement costs because inflation, cost of living is higher in Singapore recently. So going to JB is one way to reduce retirement costs. Case study number two is I'm going to use Hossan Leong. Now, Hossan Leong recently, he's a pretty famous, I guess, actor in Singapore, comedian, host, right? He has been in a number of shows in Singapore. If you are from my generation, maybe the younger ones, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, don't know him so much. But yeah, so Hossan Leong actually came out in the media. You can find him on several YouTube channels in Singapore that talked about where he talked about he moved to Johor Bahru and he's starting a business there. He has a business there where he still does talks, gigs, media related gigs for the industry, and so basically in JB he runs a business. He's there based on an employment pass, right? So he's not actually retired, right? I think people like Hossan don't really retire, I guess, but they still keep working for because they have interest in their job, right? So he has employment pass in Johor Bahru, right? And actually, on the video that if you see the one with the financial coconuts podcast, right? There's actually another Singaporean in the same video, right? That guy's name was Gary Tay. Basically, he was a retiree, right? He used to work in the semicon industry, and basically, he decided to move to Johor Bahru to retire, basically to get out more value for money, right? He mentioned that his personal living expenses went down by 60-70%, right? In Singapore, we keep complaining that things are going up, but by moving across to JB, this guy actually reduced his living costs by 60-70%, right? His children are older, of course, so I think that's easier for him. So his children are still in Singapore. One is studying in NUS, and another one's working. So I think that's easier for him, right, to retire in Johor Bahru in that way. Another case we saw from another financial retirement YouTube channel was basically another Singaporean. Her name is Socks, right? She's ex-military apparently, also retiree age. She goes to stay in Horizon Hills. She's renting, right? She enjoys the space. Of course, she enjoys the food, right? That's quite common. Low cost of living, and she enjoys making road trips in Malaysia, right? Because of course, with Malaysia, you buy a car, right? And with the car, you can travel to lots of different places. And I think that is part of the reason why she enjoy to stay in JB. Of course, she choose to rent because renting keeps her living options flexible, right? She's not tied down to one particular place. And I tell this to many people in Singapore: you don't necessarily have to buy, right? If renting is a lot more convenient for you, by all means rent, right? You don't necessarily have to buy a property in JB to retire in JB. Another case that we saw online was this Singaporean. His name is Shamir Wahid, right? He's a real estate salesperson with Propnex in Singapore, right? He used to stay in Woodlands and then decided to move with his whole family to Horizon Hills as well. So you can see Horizon Hills, quite popular place for Singaporeans. His children study at an international school. Since he's a property agent, he has a lot more flexible working hours. So he mentioned in the video that he does set up most of his appointments on the weekends. He go in on Thursday, Friday, right, and do all the appointments, stay a couple of nights in Singapore before he come back. So I think, yeah, that's one way to do it, right? If you have flexible working hours, right, and he don't have to follow the traffic jams every day in and out of JB, right? Another thing that he mentioned was that he owns a jumbo flat in Singapore, so he does rent out some rooms in his jumbo flat to earn some income there since he doesn't use the jumbo flat all that much, right? The Singapore dollar high Singapore rent used to offset his living cost in Malaysia, right? So that's one thing that a lot of Singaporeans do as well. If you do own property in Singapore, where you can rent out rooms or entire unit, you can use the high Singapore rental and use it to subsidize your living costs in Malaysia, because living costs in Malaysia are so much lower, right? Effectively, your rental in Singapore can cover your living costs in Malaysia. One more case I want to talk about is this lady called Michelle Hon. Now, Michelle Hon is also a Malaysian. Actually, she's also a Singapore PR. She has an Australian husband, though the husband looks Asian to me. Three kids. Now, this was last year's news. She actually moved to Sunway in Johor Bahru. And they did that decision because their rentals in Singapore skyrocketed. They felt that it was not worth to continue the lease. So they made the big move to stay in Johor Bahru. Now, she runs a small business in Singapore. So I think if you are a business owner, right, you have flexible hours, you can control the time you need to be in Singapore, right? You can work from home, right? I think staying in JB is definitely a good option for you, right? Especially if you run like online business or business you can run from home, right? So another thing, like similar to the case earlier, like the property agent Shamir Wahid earlier, right? If you have flexible working hours, I think not retirement, working in JB, right? Like Hossan Leong case, right, is obviously interesting option for you, right? Because of your flexible working hours, you don't really have to follow peak period traffic. So if you are considering to relocate to Johor Bahru either for retirement or for just to change your entire family's living environment, right? Yeah, I think the most important thing to factor in is actually your visa. Now, the most common visa that most retirees use actually the Malaysia My Second Home. Now, I've talked about the Malaysia My Second Home in other videos earlier. If you're interested to find out more, do watch my earlier video on Malaysia My Second Home. This is the most useful visa, right? If your intention is to be a retiree, and when I say retiree means you're going to spend majority of your time in JB, right? If you're still going to in out quite a fair bit, then you may not require this Malaysia My Second Home visa. But if you're going to spend a majority of your time in JB, then I do highly suggest the Malaysia My Second Home, and do find out more from my Malaysian My Second Home video. Right, the other method is like if you're like Hossan Leong, right? If for whatever reason you can open a business in JB, right? You can go for an employment pass. Now, employment pass has to be for a business which is legitimate, right? A real business, not just open a company, a shell company with a name inside. Right, because employment pass they do actually check that your business is a proper business. So employment pass is one way to do it if you have a legitimate business that you intend to run in Johor Bahru. The other method that can be done is through a long-term visit pass. Now, long-term visit pass, if you're married a Malaysian spouse, right, or if you still have parents or direct relatives who are Malaysian, right, you can get a long-term visit pass. Typically, this is for 1 year, right, and you can then use a long-term visit pass to stay in Malaysia. Long-term visit pass has quite simple requirements compared to Malaysia My Second Home, right? So, but you can only use it in the scenario as I mentioned earlier if you have somehow direct family member or have a spouse who is Malaysian, right? The last method actually is what I call the guardian visa. Now, guardian visa is if you have school-going children, right? If you have children who still need to go to school in Singapore, in Malaysia, right? Either private school or international school, the parents can actually get a guardian visa, right? So this basically, as a parent of the child starting in school in Malaysia, right, you can actually have the visa to stay in Malaysia, right? This is what most Koreans, Japanese, right, some Singaporeans who have children in Singapore, in JB, right, they are actually using the guardian visa to stay in JB, right? So this is actually a common an option, right? If you have or you intend to send your children to school in a private school or international school in Johor Bahru, right? So I hope this video was useful for you, right? And through some of the case studies, you can see how some people are choosing to retire in Johor Bahru, and what the reasons for it, and how the visas work for them, for them to live in Johor Bahru, right? So if you're keen to find out more, do drop a comment below on this YouTube channel, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions, right? Or if you want to have a more private discussion, feel free to contact me at my numbers 8126 1626, and or drop me an email, right? If you do enjoy our content, do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I hope to share more useful information with regards to retirement in Johor Bahru, relocation to Johor Bahru, or property investment in Johor Bahru, whichever tickles your fancy. Thank you very much, and bye bye.